touch of your lips, dear, but much more for the touch of your whips, dear. You can raise welts like nobody else as we dance to the masochism tango. Say our love is a flame, not an ember. Say it's me that you want to dismember. Blacken my eye, set fire to my tie as we dance to the masochism tango. At your command, before you here I stand. My heart is in my hand. Yeah. It's here that I must be. My heart entreats. Just hear those savage beats, and go put on your cleats and come and trample me. Your heart is hard as stone or mahogany. That's why I'm in such exquisite agony. My soul is on fire. It's aflame with desire, which is why I perspire when we tango. You caught my nose in your left castanet, love. I can feel the pain yet, love, every time I hear drums. And I envy the rose that you held in your teeth, love, with the thorns underneath, love, sticking into your gums. Your eyes cast a spell that bewitches. The last time I needed 20 stitches to sew up the gash you made with your lash as we dance to the masochism tango. Bash in my brain and make me scream with pain, then kick me once again and say we'll never part. I know too well I'm underneath your spell, so darling, if you smell something burning, it's my heart. Won't you take your cigarette from its holder and burn your initials in my shoulder, fracture my spine and swear that you're mine as we dance to the masochism tango.
What a guy. What a hunky piece of meat that man is. I almost said was, but he's still alive. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Tech Gaming. The hair is not on fleek today. It is quite stringy, quite out of control. It's quite a wonderful thing. We've been gone for a little while. For those of you who didn't see my little update video thing that I did, it's due to a lot of reasons, but mainly it's I was finishing up at a job, and then it's also finals, so it's pretty exhilarating and thrilling, as you can tell by the look of my face. I am very well rested. So just been busy, lots of classes, lots of tests, lots of things, and yeah, no, it's been pretty hectic, but we're finishing up. For those of you who missed the update video as well, I am now going to be doing this and my other startups full time. So this is going to be the thing. This is going to be the group, the gang, as it were. So we're going to be able to make a lot more content. I want to let you know before we jump into it. Excuse me. Before we jump into it, the Assassin's Creed Odyssey critique is in the works and it's almost done. It's just run into several hurdles and difficulties as we've gone, as I'm sure you assumed. Primarily just with how things were recorded, it's been very difficult to kind of fix that up and get it to the point where it's usable in the format that I usually use it. It'll make sense because with this critique, I'm trying something new. First of all, we're going to split it into 3 parts, and then we're also going to have a vlog that I'll post on my second channel, link in the description to that, that explains the process of how I go about making one of these. So you actually get to see behind the scenes what goes into this, mainly because I always see YouTubers making really cool stuff or things that I enjoy watching, and I always want to see how they go about making those, like just I'm interested in it. So I figured, why not actually make a video explaining the process so that, you know, maybe somebody sees it and wants to make their own, because that would be kind of cool. So there's going to be a lot of stuff coming. It's just kind of tedious, and there's a lot of moving pieces as I kick my desk. This is why you don't do podcasts while wearing boots. It just, everything collapses. But yeah, no, it's been fun. Lots of stuff going into it. Before we jump into, obviously, the title topic for today, I think we should also mention that this Thursday, I believe, are the Game Awards, which are always just a blast. And last year we live streamed these, and it was fairly straightforward. Like, you know, it was fun. It was a good time. But there were a bunch of copyright claims that they filed against it, because, like, Rockstar, for instance, they copyright claim pretty much everything. Even, like, cutscenes within Red Dead Redemption 2, they will copyright claim. I don't know why. I'm promoting your content. Why are you striking? I don't know. But they do nonetheless. As for other companies, they have a tendency to do it as well, because they announce a lot of stuff at the Game Awards. At least they have in years past. So it can just be a little risky every time, you know, you live stream it or do a dual live stream, something like that. You risk getting like a copyright claim, Lord forbid, a copyright strike. And those can be pretty destructive, because 3 of those and your whole YouTube channel is deleted. So it's just not, in many cases, it can be dangerous. So likely what we'll do, and what I'm thinking we'll do, is we'll live stream it, but it won't be cataloged. So it'll basically be a one-off thing. And I'm thinking we're going to do it on Twitch. Once again, link in the description box below. So we'll do that on Twitch, just so we insulate the YouTube channel. It's not going to be re-uploaded again because of copyright stuff. But if you want to watch the show with us, you can. It'll be great. We'll have a great time, and we'll watch it together. And I'm sure there will be plenty of cringe, as there always is. That's one thing you can always count on Jeff Keighley for, is his odd bromance with Hideo Kojima, and unbelievable amounts of cringe. It's just, I don't know. At this point, it's a running joke, and I don't know if they're actively trying to get it to be cringy. But nonetheless, it still happens. Like, they always have a band that sucks, and then they always have like a musical element, like an orchestra, that sucks. And they'll do like musical versions of famous video game theme songs, and it sucks. Like, there's always going to be that cringe, but at this point, it's just endearing, and it's kind of interesting. I don't know. I'm looking forward to it, though. As for like votes and things that I'm doing, I don't really want to speak too much on Game of the Year or officially vote, because I'm going to have my own video for Game of the Year. And honestly, I'm having a real hard time, and I'll just explain this to you so you can understand my dilemma. Out of the nominees this year, I would say these are all pretty accurate. I think these are the same ones I would have nominated. Except maybe Spider-Man. I don't think I would have nominated Spider-Man. Like, it's a good game, but I don't know if it was one of the best of the year. But like Odyssey, phenomenal. Celeste, phenomenal. I'd like to make videos on Celeste, but my community, I don't think, is super interested in it. If I'm wrong, let me know. But based on the stuff I've done and analyzed, it doesn't seem like it would do too well on the channel. But nonetheless, phenomenal game. God of War, really good, but there were a lot of corners that were cut, and I'm not sure if I want to necessarily reward that. Like, I think this laid a great foundation, very similar to like Horizon Zero Dawn. I thought Horizon Zero Dawn was really good, but it clearly was laying the foundation for something awesome that would come later. So I think it's establishing a new standard, a new formula, and then that formula is going to be carried forward in the sequel. So I'm really primarily excited for the second God of War game, so whatever they come out with next. As for Marvel Spider-Man, well made, solid, you know, really enjoyable, 20-25 hours, but that's about it. And compared to some of these other games on the list, in terms of content, it's severely lacking. But the content it has is really, really good, so you can't really fault it for that. As for Monster Hunter World, phenomenal. You know, there's always more to do in that game. It's massive, it's crazy, it's fun with friends. It's just really well made. It's really, really well made. One of my roommates, he's crazy into Monster Hunter World. He's trying to convince me to give Monster Hunter World the Game of the Year award. And like, it's solid. I enjoyed it. It's just very Japanese. I don't know how else to say it. Like, if you've played a lot of video games of varying styles, you know what I mean. Like, it's just so Japanese. It's like Persona 5. Yeah, it's a great RPG, but it's very Japanese, and that can be very alienating. And it's also for specific types of people. You know, there's a certain style of game that Japanese studios tend to put out, and it's very unique. So, yeah, I think that's intriguing. And as for Red Dead. Red Dead this is what we call a highly sensitive particle, okay? This is really hard to talk about because inevitably, if you criticize Red Dead, you will have the hordes coming after you, which is whatever. Who cares? I received death threats when I predicted that not Horizon Zero Dawn, the crappy futuristic game with like the procedural worlds. What the hell was that called? No Man's Sky. I'd received death threats when I said that No Man's Sky was going to be a terrible game. I just didn't get it. Like, there was no hook. There was nothing interesting. And I received death threats for it. So, like, whatever. Who cares? It is what it is. You know, 12-year-olds will always exist. But as for these, like Red Dead, it's the same kind of thing. At least with the online stuff, people are willing to acknowledge there are issues with the online. Even Rockstar has said, and we'll talk about that in a minute, Rockstar has said, yeah, there's issues with the online economy, and it has a long way to go. Pretty much what it looks like is Rockstar and Take-Two said Red Dead Redemption 2's online needs to launch and be playable by mid to late November, no later, and it should be open to everybody by early December. And they said, if it's a beta, who cares? If it's an alpha, who cares? But get it open to the public so that we can say we have it launched. Okay, whatever. And so they did that. And clearly it's not ready. Clearly it's still very much in beta, but it's just not quite ready. There's a lot of things missing, like poker's missing. You can't hold up places the same way. Getting money is incredibly difficult. Weirdly enough, I played some Red Dead Online with some friends, and weirdly enough, the best way and easiest way to make money in Red Dead is either to just farm a bunch of crap randomly, like animals, like going through different areas and just farming like gold watches and jewelry, that sort of thing, or finishing all of the main story stuff, which gives you a few $100, and then like it's 6 missions long, it's very short, and then you restart your character and start from scratch, and you just keep doing that because your money passes from character to character. At least it did when we were looking at this. So when you have to restart your character, and that's the fastest means of progressing through your game, something's broken, something's wrong. And so as for online, Red Dead's got a lot of issues, and I don't think that should be considered. If anything, that hurts it. As for other things, like with Red Dead's single player, it's really solid. Like, it's well made, but it's a Rockstar game. It doesn't really reinvent anything, doesn't do anything really unique or particularly interesting. It just is like a really solid Rockstar game, and that's why it's amazing. That's why people love it. But I'm not sure if it took many risks compared to some of the other games on this list. Like, one thing you can say about God of War is it took some big risks and did some really cool, unique things. Like Red Dead Redemption 2, what truly unique, risky thing did it do? Maybe it, like that 80-second rule that we made that video about. Maybe you could say that it stretched out interactions really far. You could say the narrative is really well written. Like, it's just there. I just read Wild Mitchell's comment. Wild Mitchell said Red Dead Redemption 2 took a risk, made an amazing franchise boring AF. That's funny. Like, and I understand why there's a lot of frustration with how the game was designed. And if people say like the game is too spread out for them or the game is too slow paced for them, I totally understand that. There is no issue with people saying that, because absolutely, for some people it is going to be too slow. Just like for some people, Monster Hunter World is going to have too much stuff to do. Obviously, like, Monster Hunter World can have too much stuff to do. If anything, for me, initially, it was overwhelming because it had so much stuff to learn, and it's a Japanese style RPG, so it's just kind of like, here's all this crap, figure it out, good luck, and that's it. For Marvel Spider-Man, you could say, like, maybe there wasn't enough stuff that you couldn't really sink your teeth into. Celeste, Maybe it's too difficult. Assassin's Creed Odyssey, same thing. Maybe there's too much to do. Maybe it's too Western. Maybe it's too silly. Maybe it messes with the lore too much. Whatever it may be. There's always going to be an issue with whatever game you're looking at. The difficulty with my selection for Game of the Year is I just got to figure out which one of these had the greatest impact on me moving forward into the next year, because I think that that's the key differentiator. All of these are great games that I would recommend to anybody. But the question is, which game am I going to be referencing in a year as phenomenally well made? Like, that was the game to check out. Just like we're doing with Breath of the Wild, we look back and we say, yeah, no, that's the standard bearer. That's the one we need to think about. Which game is going to be that for this year? And that's what I got to determine. And that's what's tough. As for other things, best ongoing game, Destiny, Fortnite, No Man's Sky, Overwatch, or Rainbow Six Siege. I mean, I kind of want to give No Man's Sky some credit because they've done a lot of work to right the ship and to do that. But my guess is they'll give it to Fortnite because, I mean, it's Fortnite. Like, how do you not? Game direction, this one's kind of tricky as to how we hand this one out. Because, once again, there's a lot of different things. Detroit Become Human, I think, is definitely a contender. I mainly just want to see this get recognized because it was really, really well made. One of my favorite games of the year. Probably not like one of the best, but in terms of my personal favorites, this is one that I really enjoyed playing and going back through and experimenting with time and time again. A Way Out, a cool novelty feature.
Siodoro Epsilon Alpha C said half of these games have no
from
replay
EA
value at all.
No
They are
clue
fun the
how
first
that
time
happened,
through, and then
but
on the
it
second
happened.
playthrough that are a
Is
boring
it a great
chore.
game? It's okay. It's a C. It's like a 70 out of 100 or 75, but it's still really clever and creative. God of War took a lot of risks, and clearly there was a directorial vision behind it that reinvented it from start to finish. So I got to give them Cory Barlog credit there. Spider-Man, really well made. But once again, did it really reinvent anything? Did it do anything really unique? Other than mixing in the Peter Parker stuff with the Spider-Man stuff, I guess you could say that that was a creative risk and thing that they did. Red Dead, again, really well managed and balanced in terms of the single player. But I'm not entirely sure if compared to these others, the director took as many risks as God of War did, Detroit did, or A Way Out did. So that's just kind of that. And then there's a bunch of others. Best narrative, best art direction. There's a lot of strong contenders for that. Best music, audio design, performance. This one's going to be really interesting because Brian Deckard, who played Connor in Detroit Become Human, he did a great job. Christopher Judge, he played Kratos. And if you see this guy in real life, you believe that he played Kratos. Very, very well done. Melissa Anthony Mahout. Melissa Anthony. I can't say it. I can't say her name. Somebody clip that. She played Cassandra. I thought she did a good job, but I don't think that she's quite here in terms of performances. Roger Clark as Arthur Morgan. To be honest, I think his performance was the most believable, the most interesting. Lenny, what are you doing, Lenny? I found you, Lenny. His, I think, was the most transformative and the most interesting. Yuri, again, did a good job. All of these guys did good jobs, but I'm probably bouncing between Christopher Judge and Roger Clark because they both really transformed into characters that are very unique and very difficult to pull off in very unique ways. And I really enjoy that. Was Cassandra well performed? Yeah, but I'm not sure if it was as transformative or as crazy as what these guys did. Transforming into the God of War or into an android or into a cowboy believably is a much more difficult thing than turning into an angsty teen or a Greek woman, and of course that's a highly, highly simplified version of it, but you get what I mean. This Roger Clark as Arthur Morgan, phenomenal. I would give it to him. Games for Impact, that's the category where it's like, this game wasn't just good, it was important. It was really important. And that's what they hand out these awards for. So it's good. We're all winners. We're all happy to be here. We're all friends. But yeah, no, there's a lot of really solid games that came out this year. It's just a matter of figuring out which one deserves recognition. And yeah, that's all I have to say with that. Now, as for the big, really fun topic of the last couple weeks, let me take a sip. Oh yeah, that's good. That's real good. What I do, this coffee shop, Dutch Brothers, I'm not being sponsored by them, but if you want to sponsor me, call me. They have like a punch card system, so every 10 punches you get a free drink of any size. So I always save it for when I really need caffeine or I want to get something really caffeinated or expensive. So normally this drink is like their largest that they possibly make, the most elaborate, and usually I think it's like $8 or something, but I use my punch card for it, so it lasts me like 2 or 3 days, and it's great. I love it. So that's what I'm drinking for this show. You know, that's what we do. Jackie says, coffee does not taste good. Such a fad. Like people pretending that alcohol actually tastes good rather than feels good. I think it depends on the type of alcohol and the type of coffee. Yeah, Daniel, there goes Luke being white. This is a classic white girl drink. I'm sorry. Sorry, was that offensive? Are you waiting for an apology? You're not going to get it. So the big topic for the last few weeks has been Bethesda's self-implosion, which they've basically, like, you think that shooting yourself in the foot is an apt term. They didn't just shoot themselves in the foot, like they shot themselves in the foot, and then they took like a screwdriver and crammed it in there, and then they like peed on it and then poured Jaeger all over it, squeezed a lemon, rubbed salt in the wound, and then they just said screw it and cut their own foot off. Like that's what they did. And it's baffling because it didn't have to be that way. They could have salvaged this at so many points over the course of this process. It's just kind of baffling that they managed to screw this up this badly. But basically what happened is the launch of Fallout 76 was totally butchered. It was terrible, which I predicted back in June during the E3 announcement. I said, I just have a hunch this is going to be terrible. What makes you think that, like, if DICE has trouble with launching Battlefield, what makes you think that Bethesda, a company that's never done something like this before, but this is a game studio specifically, has never done anything like this before, what makes you think that they're going to find success in it? They're not. Especially their company's already known for buggy single-player releases on games that they have 5 to 6 years to produce. It's going to be terrible. So it inevitably was. And the game just isn't that fun. It got panned by reviewers. They said it was just lifeless. It was a failed experiment. It just didn't work. And that's where I think this is important to figure out. Like, there's a couple ways that you can break this down. And I said this in my video on how Bethesda sold out. The one way you can explain this is that it was simply an experiment that failed, right? That simply Bethesda said, you know what? It could be cool to play Fallout 4 with friends. So why don't we do that? Why don't we make that a game? They said, okay, yeah, I guess that sounds cool. Why not? Let's try it. And that's what they did. And it just didn't work. That's one way of analyzing it and looking at it. Or what I think is the more interesting one is that they just didn't care what people thought, and this was just the way that they were going to go. And this has been the way they were going to go for years and years and years. And I think the evidence supports that more. The way Todd Howard tried to play this off was that this was like an exciting experiment that they were going to tackle together with their players and with their new acquisition in Austin and Montreal. But in reality, I think this is where it had been going since before 2015, since like 2014, 2013, 2012. This was always going to happen. It's like 6-7 years ago, they knew that this was going to happen. And I think that there's a lot of ways that you can see that with regards to, for instance, if we look at like the Creation Club, which launched a couple years back. If you look at things like paid mods, if you look at all of these things, Bethesda Net, all of those things were created for Fallout 76 specifically. So for instance, let's tackle Bethesda Net. Bethesda Net, when it was initially announced, if you remember back, I forget when they officially announced it, but Bethesda Net was initially announced as just a like website, like a hub for Bethesda, and that's all it was going to be. And it was going to be the center for all of their games, and they were going to publish mods through it. And it wasn't really clear what they meant for it to be, but nonetheless, it was there. And like, okay, that's whatever. It's a website with like your name on it. Who cares? Who gives a crap? But now we see that Bethesda Net was created to be the hub, the center of all of their games, like Uplay, like Steam, like EA's launchers, all of that, Origin Access and all that. And it makes sense because if you look at Fallout 76, a slack-jawed moron could have figured out that Fallout 76 was going to have very high return probabilities. So normally when you have a product and you're about to put it on sale, you got to figure out what the likelihood of returns are going to be, because returns are very expensive. Whenever you get a return, usually you have to ship it back to the original, like if it's merchandise, you have to ship it back to the primary distributor, and then they got to analyze why they returned it. If it was broken, if it's in fine condition, you repackage it. You got to figure all that stuff out, and all that costs money. It's very expensive. With gaming specifically, if you return something through Steam, and you look at like Steam sales, for instance, you pay $60 for a game. Steam is going to take a certain percentage cut of that. I forget what the current number is. It might be 7%, might be 10%, might be more than that. I don't know. But let's just say for ease of numbers, 10%. So Steam is taking $6 out of that $60 game that you just bought. Then you decide you want to return it because you played less than 2 hours of it, and it's within 2 weeks of when you bought it. So you're going to return it, and you file that form, and Steam issues the refund. What normally happens is Steam retains their cut. So Steam keeps that $6, but you still need your full $60 back, right? So Bethesda has to pay that difference. So Bethesda will lose $6 for every return that is issued. So returns are incredibly expensive. And what this normally means is that game companies are going to actively make sure that they have certain steps, certain things involved to try to prevent that from happening. So what we've seen in the last few years is games that are super front loaded so that those first 2 hours of content are filled so you can't return it. Or you'll see a separate launcher created so that you buy the license for the game, and then you have to put that license into their launcher so it's separated so you can't return it. Because for business, it just isn't good. Now, there's other companies that look at this, like CD Projekt Red looks at that, and instead of saying, how can we get them so they can't return it because it's expensive? Let's put up all these walls and barriers to make it really hard. Like, instead of thinking like that, they say, people are trying to return games, and when they return games, it's really expensive. What if we just made a game that's so good they don't want to return it? That's the difference between these companies. And I think that's more indicative. And as for like who's responsible for this, everyone likes to bash Todd. It's very possible Todd is at the center of all of this. It's very possible. Todd, a number I saw, again, I don't know if this is completely true. The number I saw was that Todd takes home millions upon millions of dollars every year, which sounds about right. He's the center of an incredibly profitable gaming company. The number I saw was that he was worth several tens of millions of dollars. Good for him. Good on you. You've made some incredibly profitable franchises. So good on you for doing that. As for whether that's reflective, I'm not saying that if you're wealthy, you're a bad person. If you're wealthy, I'm jealous of you and you should share because I want to buy stuff. But with that specifically, what I'm saying is if he's somebody who clearly has a financial focus in this industry, and it's not necessarily all about passion like they seem to advertise, if it's more financially motivated, then there could be a lot of other moving parts to this. And with Todd Howard specifically, it could simply be that he's looking at it and saying, you know what? Yeah, no, Fallout 4, it was okay. But if we just turn that into an online game, it would be a whole nother $60 release like we did with Skyrim. Why don't we do that? Yeah, let's do that. Why not? And I think he's got much more corporate. Back in the early and mid 2000s, when they were a tiny company, they were trying to make a good game that resonated with the public so they could make a name for themselves. I think that's what it was. I believe it was Morrowind. He said Morrowind, if it wasn't successful, there wouldn't be a Bethesda Game Studios. They would have had to like close down, shut shop, and they would have all gone their separate ways. But instead, all of that happened. And this question from Demetrius, I think, is very pertinent. In your opinion, is there something in the background that made Bethesda feel safe to release the game in this state? And I think that's a very important question, because you have to ask, like, it's not like they weren't aware that the game was like it is. It's not like they didn't know that there were tons of glitches, that it wasn't that fun. All of these focus testers, you better believe the people playing this game and the artists on those teams were saying, I don't know if it's a good idea to not have any like actual narrative in here. Even Todd Howard, when they announced this game, think back to E3. When they announced this game, if this game were really what their fans wanted and were really exciting, they would have just left it there. That would have been the last thing they talked about. But instead, they pad the announcement with announcements of Starfield and Elder Scrolls 6 so that you remember, yeah, no, this isn't what I wanted at all. But, oh yeah, single player stuff that I actually want. That's, okay, they're still making that? Okay, then whatever, do whatever you're going to do. But that's, as long as you're doing that, that's what I want. They knew that this isn't what their fans wanted. So the question is, whose idea was it and what made them feel like this was a good idea? If it was coming from on high and the people higher up in ZeniMax, then maybe Bethesda's thing was like, okay, yeah, no, if you're going to do that, why don't we just tackle it? Why don't we just do it under our brand and let us design it, and instead of doing like the Elder Scrolls Online thing. Maybe that's what it was. Maybe it was that, hey, if we develop that, are we going to get all the online revenue, all the microtransaction stuff from it? Yeah, okay, we'll do that, and we'll take that on. I don't know. Or maybe it was just a tactical thing. Maybe Todd is playing the long game here, which is also very possible. Clearly, Todd is a smart guy. And this, I think, is the most possible and likely outcome. So heed my words. That's all. I was going to say something else, but heed my words. I think that this is what's going on. I think what Todd wanted to do is, with Starfield and with Elder Scrolls 6, he knew that this was going to be these are going to be very large projects, and that these games are going to implement all sorts of online elements and like server generation. I think there's going to be all sorts of procedural generation stuff. So I think it's going to be incredibly ambitious and very, very large. And I think what he knew was that he was going to need a very large team to do it. So what he did is he looked at it and he said, okay, I need to expand Bethesda Game Studios for a game that likely isn't releasing until 2020 or later. For that, how do I tell the people up in management, hey, I need a huge staff to work on these huge games that you're not going to see for another decade? How do you convince them to do that? You don't. What you do is you tell them, hey, we're going to pursue these projects that require some expansion and some acquisition, and they potentially could make us a lot of money, and then we can use that same staff to work on these bigger projects that I have lined up for a decade down the road. And I think that that's what he was planning on doing. I think that he was simply in it for the larger staff, because now he has Bethesda Game Studios in Maryland, in Austin, and in Montreal. He's got a team of several hundred people, which is probably 3 times or more what he had for Fallout 4. So he's finally able to do what he wants, and he has the manpower to do it, because that was always the issue with Fallout 7 or with Fallout 4 and with Skyrim, is that they had a really small team. So it was just incredibly difficult for them to do it and to take it above and beyond. And I think what we're going to see from the next few years is that Todd is going to fully acknowledge that that wasn't right, and it's going to become a meme, and Bethesda's Game Studios is going to reference it. Maybe the corporate management isn't going to talk about it because clearly the corporate guys don't know what the hell they're doing. And we'll talk about that in a second. But I personally think that Todd is playing the long game. I don't think he calculated or realized just how much people were going to hate Fallout 76. I think he thought that it was going to be just like a mad game. People would pass it and it just wouldn't sit well. But I think initially it started as just a ruse for Todd to get more staff. I think that's all this was. And then very quickly it snowballed and turned into a thing where all of a sudden he's got a terrible game that he's being blamed for, when he was just trying to throw together something so that he could pass it off and then move on to the project he's actually interested in, which is Starfield and Elder Scrolls 6. So That's my little conspiracy theory. I think that it makes sense, and I think that that's where we're going. So I wouldn't stress too much about those future games, because I don't think that I don't think Fallout 76 is completely indicative. Lisa asked, do you think it was a beta test for future games, knowing it wouldn't work to drive more hype and news? I mean, theoretically, that would imply that they're looking at probably Elder Scrolls 6 and onward having a lot of online elements being implemented, because like Starfield's already in development. If it were a beta test, it's too late to cut it out if it didn't work, and it's too late to add it if it did. So with Starfield, the game is going to be what it is. And as for Elder Scrolls 6, that's probably still in the early planning stages. And I think, I don't know, I think it's just really interesting. I don't think it's necessarily like a dry run or a testing the waters. I think it honestly was just Todd needed more staff. They had already developed an online design, as he said in the No Clip documentary. The first thing you hear Todd Howard say in that documentary is, did you know Fallout 76 is just the online design from Fallout 4? It is, right? That's crazy. They'd already designed this. Clearly, this was thrown together. It wasn't his passion project. And based on the E3 thing, you could tell it wasn't his passion project. I just think to get a larger group of people, a larger staff, he just needed to offer some sacrifice to the almighty ZeniMax gods. So he threw this together, and they just didn't realize how much the gaming community hated a crappy, unpolished pile of garbage. And I think they thought that it would sell okay, and maybe do like 75-80% of what Fallout 4 did, and people would play it and move on pretty quickly, and it would just kind of be a blip on the radar, and people would just forget about it. They did not anticipate how badly people would react. And to be honest, I didn't anticipate this either. I thought it was going to sell fairly well and still make them a ton of money. And maybe it is. It's very possible. But nonetheless, it is interesting. I think they totally underestimated how much people were going to despise this, which I think is good. And this is the question here. The big controversy that all of this builds towards is the canvas bag controversy, which really, it was just like, it was easy to advertise, easy to discuss and throw out there. It's very viral. Like, it's such a symbolic, like the canvas bag. It's easy to picture. It's easy to understand what we're talking about. And I think for this, that's exactly what it is. And so what happened was Bethesda had this advertisement where they talked about, let me flip over here, where they talked about this canvas bag being included in the $200 collector edition. And the one you got was just like a total piece of crap. It was basically a garbage bag. And so people were upset and threw a fit, as they should have. And it expanded. There were talks of lawyers getting involved with all sorts of like false advertising claims, things like that. And then Bethesda just announced that they will ship real canvas bags as long as you can provide a proof of purchase and things like that. So they did beat it out. And, if they had just done this immediately, who cares? I don't think that this was like an active thing where they thought, oh yes, now our customers won't do it. Like, again, this is the big thing I want everyone to take home. Like, this is in the end of the class, this is what teacher Luke is throwing out there. Never attribute to maliciousness what can be explained through idiocy. And I think that that's what this is. Like, were Bethesda trying to be evil and sneaky and do terrible things to their customers? Probably not. I think they were just being really stupid. And I think that that's probably more likely. I think they just didn't know what they were talking about or what they were doing, and they just blew it. And now they're having to either, whatever the saying would be, make your cake and eat it too. Is that a saying? That doesn't sound right to me. Eat it too is a theory. Like, take your cake and eat. I don't know. Whatever it is. Jackie says, wrong, greed to the extreme in the video game industry today. Well, yeah. clearly there's an element of greed, but there is this misunderstanding, I think, on a lot of people's parts that companies' desire for revenue is inherently bad. And that's not bad. Like, if you're looking at Bethesda Game Studios, if they're developing a big studio, or like CD Projekt Red, we'll use them because they're awesome. CD Projekt Red, they want more revenue. They want to sell more copies of The Witcher 3 no matter what they do, right? Because the more money they take in, the larger they can make their new games, the more staff they can get involved, the bigger and badder they can do everything. And I think that's just fine. I think where the tactics come in, that's where it becomes problematic. With like Ubisoft, part of the issue that people feel with them is that they have microtransactions in a lot of their games. In Assassin's Creed Odyssey, you could buy things like extra cosmetics. You could buy things like all sorts of XP boosts and currency boosts and things like that were by no means necessary, but for some people that wanted to just sprint through the game, they could buy those and it would be whatever. And I think that that's where the distinction comes. And I personally have no issue if there's cosmetic purchases and microtransactions in a game, especially if the game is so good and expensive that they just need more revenue. What Bethesda should have done with the Creation Club stuff is they should have just said straight up, come out, said very clearly, yeah, guys, so these games are getting really expensive to make, and the stuff we're doing for Starfield and Elder Scrolls 6 is crazy and unbelievably ambitious. It's going to blow your brain. So we just need more revenue to help justify that. So we're releasing Fallout 76, and there's going to be microtransactions in the form of cosmetics available. So if you want to buy new costumes and things that we create and to support us, you can do that. But if you don't want to, it's completely optional and completely cosmetic. If they said that, we would have been like, okay, like, yeah. I mean, does it suck that you have to put that in? Yeah, I wish that you didn't have to, but at least you're being clear and communicating that. And that's what I don't get about these huge marketing companies. For those of you who watched the update video I did, I told you guys that I started a multimedia marketing and media production company. And so I do a lot of this stuff dealing with how you interact with customers. And the thing is, you have to understand who you're talking to, right? So who's going to be reading these press conferences and these press statements? Who's going to be reading the statement that where Bethesda says that they published and put these things out so that people would have more option and more variety and more choices in how they play? Like, the only people that are reading that and care are the people who are hardcore gamers and don't like microtransactions and don't like this corporate runaround. The other people, like everybody else, doesn't care and isn't going to read it. They're going to play the game no matter what you put in that report. So why aren't you writing it for the people that are going to be reading it? It doesn't make sense to me. Instead, they're writing it to try to appeal to everybody. Like, they're scared that the New York Times is going to start doing an article on it. And then all of a sudden, all those gamers who read the New York Times are going to be upset about it. It's so stupid. And I don't think they understand who their audience really is. Yeah, the issue with like pay to win, like Oscar's saying, one of the issues with like Red Dead Online is that there are some real pay to win dangers in that game as it stands. And they got to be real careful about that, because like part of what made Grand Theft Auto 5 good is that it was always balanced. And yeah, there was some pay to win, like where you can buy actual money. But the economy was such that you could make money in a normal way without paying anything, and you could still have a good time. Right now, the economy is so broken in Red Dead Online that you basically are going to have to spend money if you want to stand a chance against anybody. And that's an issue, because like a decent gun is like $600, and it's going to take you probably 15, 20 hours of play to get that much money if you're buying other things like ammo along the way. So it's just, they got to figure that out. I completely agree. But Bethesda's trying to add things. They're trying to up the stash size. People were asking why like the stash was limited to 400 pounds. Apparently it was an engine issue. Apparently it was an issue where the game couldn't track all of the objects that people were carrying around if it was more than 400 items in the stash, or 400 pounds in the stash. So once again, the engine is just, it's just so stupid. They got to fix that. They got to figure that out, because the engine is holding them back. And I think now, like in reality, is the creation engine going to, or the creation kit going to hold back what Starfield's going to do? Probably not. They've probably done a lot of work on it, and there's probably a lot of cool stuff that we haven't seen that's going to be implemented. Clearly, the version of the creation engine that they're using for Fallout 76 was basically immediately taken from Fallout 4 and then tweaked. Maybe even before Fallout 4 and then tweaked. What they're using for Starfield is probably way different. So is that going to hold them back? Not necessarily. But as with anything in public relations or marketing or advertising, whatever, it's all about making sure that perception is what's important. Perception is way more important than reality. And in this case, the perception is that the creator or the creation engine, the creation kit is holding them back. And so even if that's not necessarily true, it's what people believe is true. And once people believe that that's true, it's very hard to convince them otherwise. And so what they should honestly do is they should just like hire an outside team to develop a new engine with a lot of the code and then just rebrand it and rename it. It's not that hard. Like they should just clear it out, wipe it off, wipe their hands and say, look, we have a new engine and we're going to call it Bethesda Kit or Bethesda Smidgenhofer. Like they should just call it something else. Everyone will be happy. You'll move forward. It'll be great. But instead they keep thinking as though like the creation kit is what people want. And it just doesn't make any sense. Like it's not going to cost you that much to rebrand the creation kit. It's not. So just do it. Just do it. Rebrand it. Make some tweaks. Alter the way that it handles like streaming and those types of things. And then call it a new engine. It'll just be happy. Yeah, it just works. The Sweet Little Lies engine. That'll be good. Yeah. Unreal Engine 4 would be better than that twisted MMO engine. Yeah, Unreal Engine probably would have worked better, but if Bethesda's taking their game off of Steam because they don't want the $6 cut or whatever cut that Steam takes, you better believe they're not going to upload it to or license Unreal, where they're going to have to pay royalties for every copy they sell. They're definitely not going to do that. And that's the main issue. Developing a new engine is so expensive that they just don't want to be bothered with it. As for other things, Red Dead Online's economy, Rockstar officially announced that they are aware it's broken and has issues, and they're working on balancing those right now, and they will be updating the game later in the week to try to update it. So that's good. As for other things, like I said, Game Awards are coming up. Other big releases, there's not much leading into the end of December, and then at the end of December we cycle into January, and in January we have like what's the big game? Kingdom Hearts, I think, is coming in January. There's a couple others. There was a question earlier I wanted to reference though real quick before we part ways. I think somebody asked me, the news just dropped that Naughty Dog is not going to be at the Game Awards, which they've been there in the past, and normally they have big announcements to show off during those events. But Naughty Dog officially announced they're not going to be there. They're not going to be showing off The Last of Us Part 2, which a lot of people were kind of disappointed by or very, very worried, because they're like, okay, so time out. They're not doing PSX. Sony's not going to be at E3 this year. They're not doing anything for that. And you're not going to be showing anything at the Game Awards. So realistically, like, I guess we're just not going to see anything until December of next year. Nothing from Sony. They'll release probably Days Gone and a couple of their other first-party titles, and that's about it. So what's the deal? Like, what's happening? And I think that's pretty indicative. I think what it personally is that Sony's getting ready for the next gen, and they're holding a lot of their closest cards to their chest, and they're going to launch those as launch titles. So I think a lot of the stuff they probably could show off, they could show off like a demo of Horizon Zero Dawn 2 or whatever they're going to call it, and just say, yeah, this is coming in 2020 on an unannounced system. Oh, what's going to happen? I don't think that they want to do that. I think they want to wait until they announce the console, and then they just go ham. And maybe what we'll see is this summer they do their own event and announce the PlayStation 5 out of nowhere, and everyone's blown away. And they say it's coming 2020, like March 2020, and we have these games to show for it. And then they show off like The Last of Us Part 2 and all of that stuff. They might have honestly pushed back Last of Us Part 2 to be a cross-console title, which I think could make sense based on some of the stuff that they've shown. And it would fall in line with the last of Us game, which launched in 2013, right when the consoles were crossing over into the new console generation. So I think it could make a lot of sense. They're definitely echoing a lot of this. So I think that could make a lot of sense. And yeah, Bloodborne 2 could be a launch title for sure. More than anything, I don't know. I actually very much doubt that From Software is working on a Bloodborne 2. I think Sony owns the IP, so like Sony owns it. Sony can do whatever they want with it. If they want to make another one, they can. And Lord knows that it's sold well enough that they could, and so they might just pass it off, kind of like what they did with Dark Souls 2. They might pass it off to another team, and just throw out something. And it probably isn't going to be as good as the original, but nonetheless, it'll still be another game in the franchise, which will sell well. Yeah, and as for Death Stranding, I'll be honest, I don't know what that game is. Everyone's so excited, and it's one of the most highly anticipated games of the year. But here's the thing. I'm not Jeff Keighley. I don't have a hard-on for Hideo Kojima. I'm like, if the game is good, I will buy it and play it. If the game is bad, I won't. I don't really give a crap who you have a man crush on. I don't have a man crush on the developer. Who cares? If the game's awesome, I'll do it. But from what I've seen right now, I have no clue what that game's about. I have no clue what the gameplay is going to be like or what any of that's going to be like. So why would I be freaking out about it now? I honestly don't get the insane amount of hype. The Obsidian RPG I am very excited for. I am very intrigued to see what we get there. Because I think that could be really, really good. I really do. Anything from Obsidian. I just hope it isn't isometric. And I know that that's silly of me because a lot of really great games are isometric. But I think Obsidian should expand into the third person. And now that they are owned and operated by Microsoft, I think it could be really, really cool to see what they can do with a larger budget. Because the last few years, they've been very strapped for cash. And so now that they have the resources of a larger company, I think that they could do some really cool stuff. Persona 6, who knows? Persona 5 launched, and it launched a couple years, or launched earlier in Japan. So let me, Persona 5, I forget the exact timeline. Yeah, launched in Japan in September of 2016, and then worldwide in 2017. So really, if we're looking at it, it's only been a year and a half, 2 years. And they take a while to make, I'm sure. So my guess would be it's not going to be till next generation. And when it comes out next generation, it'll look and feel like it's a game from this generation, because that's Persona. But no one will really care because it's still going to be awesome. And that's just how it goes. And Ghost Keys says, Luke, will you make any movie critiques? I don't know. I've thought about it. It could be interesting. More than anything, I'm not sure if I'll do specifically movie critiques. I am interested in broader topics. I'm trying to figure out how to say this without giving stuff away. But I think that there's a lot of topics and industries and themes. I guess you could say categories. There's a lot of categories in the video production market that could benefit from these long form critiques and from video essay style things. So things like breaking down, Neat says Hamlet review when they finally release the Benedict Cumberbatch version. You better believe I'll do it. Something like that could be cool. To break down why Benedict Cumberbatch's performance in the new Hamlet is really phenomenal. That could be really interesting. At least I think it could be. Simple yak review. Exactly. So things like that I think could be really interesting. But I'm trying to figure out what that would look like, and I want to make sure I cover a topic that's very interesting for me. And I have a couple ideas and a couple of things that I think could be very intriguing with where I live specifically. And I think I should leave it there because, yeah. Amir says, I have to say this, Luke. You look like Doctor Strange. You think I look like Doctor Strange? I've never gotten that before. Are you talking about like Benedict Cumberbatch, or are you talking about like the cartoon characters? Because, I mean, I'd like to think that, you know, I look kind of like an alien. You know, I'll take compliments where I can get them. He's, I will say Benedict Cumberbatch without facial hair looks like an unripened tomato. There's something there. But he's amazing, and I love him to death. I'm a total Benedict Cumbersnatch. Yeah, Jackie, one day. Howler's Moon, how about an Equus review? If you guys don't know what Equus is, I won't go through and explain it again because it's intense. Just Google EQUUS, the play, and read through the synopsis. It will break your brain. That's a play that is pretty messed up. It's not for the faint of heart. Don't look up pictures or videos until you know what it's about. I'm warning you. And now, of course, you all are going to do that. This is what's going to happen. I'm sorry. You made me do it. But yeah, no, as for all of this, thank you so much for coming out, guys. Thank you so much for talking and for chilling. I've got a company meeting to get to and some finals to finish up. But I am working on the Assassin's Creed Odyssey critique. Like I said, we'll have a vlog posted to my second channel, links in the description, going through the process of creating a critique from start to finish. So you'll actually get to see how I've been creating the video, which I think could be really, really cool and interesting. So make sure you jump over to that second channel, subscribe to that so you see when that's up, and make sure you're watching for when that drops here, because I think it'll be kind of cool. And I'll keep you guys updated on the Discord and on Twitter as to what we're going to do for the Game Awards. I got to figure that out. But thank you for watching. Thank you for coming out. I love you all. Go team. Love you. Bye.